able to perform miracles and attract miracles into your life, you have to purify this temple that you live in. And your temple, the temple that you live in, is something that was intended into this universe with perfection. And any energy that comes into it, like yesterday I demonstrated the impact of aspartame and saccharin on the body. In 1,000 out of 1,000 cases in the eye of the eye, Hawkins describes how it doesn't make any difference whether the person knows or doesn't know. Whenever you put that artificial substance into your body, you are weakening your body. And letting go of addictions and letting go of the belief that these are things that have more power over you than you have to let go of them is one of the energy levels below that calibrates below 200. It isn't spirituality in this presentation here today is not about what church you attend and what scriptures you read. It's about how you stay connected to the perfection from which you were intended in the very first place. And I'd like you to really understand that. And when you do, you'll understand that anything that you do that is self-defeating to this temple, as the Sufis used to say, if you don't have a temple in your heart, you'll never find your heart in a temple. And it's about having a temple in your heart. It's about staying connected. And when you do, exercise becomes a regular part of your life. It's a spiritual experience. The foods that you eat become a spiritual experience. The music that you listen to becomes a spiritual experience. The books that you allow into your home, the programs that you allow to be on your television set, the kinds of ideas that you read in newspapers. So it's this force and counterforce thing. Now, as individuals, we understand when the World Trade Center was hit, our first impact, our first inclination was to be kind. What can we do? And you saw people donating blood. We had more blood donated in the first few hours after that than they had to tell people to stop doing it. They had people getting into their fire trucks in Iowa and driving them all the way to Manhattan. They had people going into burning buildings and taking people out. Our whole sense of compassion, because compassion is one of the highest energy levels that you can reach. It calibrates around 470. That when you have compassion in your heart for those who are operating or living at lower levels. And I remember the story that I heard shortly after the World Trade Center disaster, and it was of grandfather talking to his grandson. And the grandson was looking up at his grandpa, and his grandpa said, you know, he said, I feel as if I have two wolves barking inside of me. He said, the first wolf is filled with anger and hatred and bitterness and mostly revenge. And then he said, I have a second wolf barking inside of me who is filled with love and kindness and compassion and even forgiveness. And the grandson looked up at his grandpa and said, which wolf do you think will win, Grandpa? And his grandfather responded, whichever one I feed. And we have to look at what we feed internally in ourselves. When Einstein reminded us that until we come up with an alternative to using force as a way of resolving our disputes, we are doomed as a people to destroy ourselves. We'll destroy ourselves. The weapons that we have put aside in order to resolve our disputes cannot even be used. Because if we explode them and the wind changes, it blows back on us the very thing that we are attempting to put onto our enemies.
So if we begin to shift our statements, the statements first of all that we say to ourselves, and then the statements that we say because and so what I want everybody who's listening today to do is to take a look at all of the things in your life that you don't like, that aren't working the way you would like them to work, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's financial, whether it's with your health, whether with your job, with your friendships, or whatever it might be. And instead of saying, and when you ask yourself, now, how did it come to be this way? Kind of go back and go all the way back as far as you can go to even being a young boy or a young girl. And how many times have you heard or said the words that were predictive of this showing up in your life? And then get to a place where you start to change that around. And you have not only a different set of expectations, but a different way of making decrees, so that you decree that things are going to work out, that your prosperity is on its way, that your relationship is going to improve, that your health is something that you have control over. I'll give you an example of this, and then we'll open up to the phones. My daughter Serena is here. Who's written a book called Don't Die With Your Music Still In You. It's a book that I give out on the show to people who call in. My experience growing up with spiritual parents. And she has a new little baby. Her baby's name is Sailor, and Sailor is 3 months old. Now, Sailor has something called acid reflux, that's so that her stomach, so when she's nursing or when she gets her bottle or whatever it is, she starts throwing up a lot. Now, my daughter Serena has had this her entire lifetime, from the time that she was a little girl, and her mother, my wife, also had that when she was a young girl. It's this thing called acid reflux, okay, and they have little prescriptions for it, Prilosec and things like that people take. It's sort of predictive of what Serena has experienced for herself in her whole life. So I said to her yesterday, I said, honey, do you realize that that little baby who came out of you shares your DNA and shares your blood and is as, just because the cord has been cut, but is just as connected to you, spiritually and metaphysically and mentally, is just as connected to you as if she were inside of your womb. And that you had this experience yourself, and rather than already setting up this decree that Sailor's going to have this, is just something she's going to have to struggle with. My mother had it. She has, I had it, and now she's going to have it. I said, you have the capacity to communicate with her and begin to program into her subconscious mind from the time that she, and every time you look at her and see her, she can, when you look at her, she looks at you different than anybody else, because you're her mother, and she looks into your eyes and all that. And instead of telling her that you have acid reflux and I'm really sorry, I'm going to give you more milk than you need and you're going to have this for a lifetime, I said, you have the power to heal this, to put your hand on her stomach and on her throat. And when she's taking this, instead of convincing yourself that this child is going to have this for a lifetime, I want you to begin to just say to yourself, I can heal this for you, honey, and talk to her like this. And I put my hand on her stomach and I said, you're such a sweet baby, and you don't have to have this throwing up stuff, and you don't have anything called acid reflux. You're perfectly healthy. You're a divine creation. You are perfect. Mommy's going to be here for you and show you exactly how to deal with this, and start programming her subconscious mind right now, so that when words do begin to develop within her, and she speaks first in words and then in sentences, what you're going to say is that you don't have this. This is just a minor little obstacle, and it's not anything that's going to dominate your life. And read your sister's book, Goodbye Bumps, because she was able to do the very same thing by shifting her consciousness around. So, we get programmed from the time that we're little, about what we can do and what we can't do, how fast we can run, how much we can lift, how athletic that we are, how good we are at mathematics, how, whether or not we're coordinated, whether we can dance, whether we can do a headstand, whether we get, it's just almost every few minutes of our life, there are these decrees coming out of us. And you don't want to have any decree coming out of you that isn't predictive of what you would like to attract and create for yourself, versus a decree that says, it's going to be difficult, I can't make it happen, my luck is never going to work out, I've been sick, this runs in our family, my mother had it, my grandmother had it, and on and on and on and on it goes.
Now you will hear about 3 energy fields and ways of keeping them uncontaminated. The first energy field is your immediate energy body, which I also refer to as etheric or faster. From a standing position, extend your arm forward and mentally note the most distant point where your fingers extend. Now imagine your arm extending straight above your head to a point over your body, and then behind you and beneath you as well. You now have an image of a field of energy which continuously surrounds your body. I call this field your fast energy body, which is inseparable from your solid and visible slower energy body. Using your imagination, take a moment now to visualize this field of faster energy with its edges or boundaries around you. When another person, particularly a stranger, crosses your boundary, you immediately feel as if you've been invaded. You move back instinctively to create a safer distance. Why? Because your energy body feels the invasive force and alerts you with a state of discomfort. If someone remains in your energy body field for an extended period of time, they begin to affect your entire being with their energy, bringing you down if you feel out of sync with them, and raising you up if they resonate to a higher energy vibration than you. I refer to the second energy field as your broader environmental energy field. To get a sense of this physical energy field, think about your energy field extending into your home, your workplace, your family, and your community. The vibrational pattern of this energy field is your broader environmental energy field. This energy field, in which your solid body walks and talks and sleeps and works and plays, is impacted by the energy frequency of whoever enters it. Now I want you to think of a field of energy so immense that you cannot even create imaginary boundaries for it. I call this the mind field energy. Your thoughts and the thoughts of others interact in your mind field in such a way as to raise or lower your frequency of vibration. When the thoughts and feelings of others impinge upon your mind energy field, there will be one of two results. Either your energy field will be increased, as is said to have happened when Buddha and Jesus entered a village. Just their presence in the village and nothing more would raise the consciousness of those around them. Or your energy field will be decreased and consequently become contaminated. The way others think and how they radiate out their thought energy can impact you. But it is not only people who impact your energy fields. Noise levels, air quality, food purity, all touch and affect your fields of energy. What you may not realize is that you play a potent role in keeping your energy fields clean and uncontaminated, and that you also have a salubrious and cleansing effect on the energy field of those around you. Hopefully, you will be motivated to begin implementing a new approach that will clear all of your energy fields and maintain a state of clarity, free of energy patterns that contaminate your life in any way. How do you treat this body, which is the living organism that sends out the waves of electromagnetic energy? What foods do you use to replenish and replace it with? What toxins do you absorb? How much peaceful rest do you provide for it? Do you exercise it regularly? Is your emotional state calm? Do you meditate to bring yourself into harmony with God? Your body must be loved. It is your home and must be cleansed of all junk. Your body is not your enemy. You do not need to get free of your body in order to access spiritual guidance. This perfectly functioning machine called your body knows what is needed, where it is needed, and how to prioritize those needs in times of crisis. You control this marvelously complex instrument that is your home through your thoughts. The second factor that impacts your immediate field of energy is what you allow to impact your body from without. What kinds of people do you allow into your immediate space? When you allow toxic people into your immediate energy field, you will find that your feelings of well-being diminish. You must say goodbye, albeit with unconditional love, to anyone who pollutes your life space with slowed-down energy. Or, you must be prepared to stave off the intrusion of lower energy people first by recognizing it, and then neutralizing it by radiating stronger energy yourself. The problem with attempting to continually be a neutralizer is that the effort required often exhausts you, and that level of fatigue makes you susceptible to the lower energies. If someone brings anxiety, shame, depression, fear, whining, complaining, apathy, stress, worry, anger, guilt, or any of the multitude of what I call lower energy patterns, they are inviting you to join in their misery and load your life up with the problems that they live with every day. Resolve to remove yourself from any toxicity that threatens the purity of your life space. When you feel yourself being breached, take immediate action, first by recognizing what is happening, and then moving in counteraction. Consciously send out thoughts of kindness and love. Remove yourself in a conflict-free way from the invading energetic forces. Anyone who you allow to be a regular visitor in your body energy field must come with love, peace, and the higher spiritual energies. The closer you come to being in a dynamic state of grace in your thoughts and refusing to be in the fields of those who are projecting lower energy thoughts, the closer you come to being in God's mind field. You may believe that the opposite of love is hate. I do not see these two emotions as opposites. In fact, love and hate are often closely aligned. To me, the opposite of love is fear. When you have fear, you do not have love. Ego uses fear as a way to keep authentic love out of your life. When love is not present in your life, you have succumbed to ego and allowed fear in where love could be. You have allowed ego to replace God. Learning to experience authentic love means abandoning ego's insistence that you have much to fear and that you are in an unfriendly world. This begins with an assessment of your reluctance to embrace love. If you are not experiencing love in your life right now, it is because you are, in some way, afraid. You need to examine your fears with honesty and with love. When you do, you will transform your fears into love. You will open up a space within you that can only be occupied by love. In this space you are on purpose, walking the way of the sacred self. But first, you must see how you substitute fear for love. Your ego steadfastly promotes fear because it fears authentic love itself. This false self helps you convince yourself that you are in some way incomplete. That is the source of all fear. Afraid of having your emptiness, your incompleteness exposed, you expend a lot of energy creating a false image of happiness. The fear about exposing the emptiness keeps you seeking relationships that ego tells you will satisfy the longing within you. What happens is that you enter a relationship starved for the love that is your higher self. Your inner hunger is masked, pretending to be something else. No wonder so many people repeatedly think they have found love and repeatedly declare they've lost it. How different it is when you can notice the inner emptiness and think, what's not to like? This longing is part of being human and knowing love. Then you will let ego know that fear is not your choice. Love is your choice. Just imagine how our system might be if people knew they were already complete. What would you need to purchase? What would you need to have to own? Who would you have to impress? Who would you need to have on your arm? The answers give you an idea of how much we rely on the fear that we are incomplete and unacceptable as we are, and how unaware we are of our divine connection. The fear that is a substitute for love is simply a fear of being unacceptable. Virtually all fears can be traced directly back to self-esteem. If you love yourself, you will be able to transform your fears with love rather than allow them to direct your life. If you have an inner feeling of being complete and whole, knowing the loving presence that is there, then fear becomes a loving invitation to know more or to change something in your life. Fear will no longer threaten you as it did when you were unacquainted with your higher self. The inability to rely on the love that is our very essence shows up in many forms. Your ego wants you to believe that you are unacceptable and will gleefully assist you in creating an image to prove that it is so. Manifestations like obesity and personal slovenliness and eating disorders often are the fear-based projection of yourself. Ego can influence you to shun all efforts to be loved by others by refusing to allow the risk of an intimate encounter or the development of an intimate relationship. Ego often makes you selfishly pursue your own goals at others' expenses. You engage in perpetual conversation about yourself. We often use economic, social, and other types of excuses to defend behavior that does not extend love. For instance, you might excuse unloving or inconsiderate behavior because it's only my job, or because everyone else does it. Expressions of disgust or rudeness towards others are based on ego. They are heard in stores, on freeways, in offices, at airports, in restaurants, any place you are in your daily life. These are some of the common expressions of a fear-based ego struggling to keep you away from the experience of love that is your true essence. Before you begin to change these behaviors and thought patterns, you need to examine the payoffs. What is some part of your receiving as a payoff for listening intently to ego? Your ego works for its living. Its payoff is not money, but just in keeping alive. Your ego is not open to making contact with God because it would be immediately put out of business. Your ego is in direct conflict with your true purpose for being there. You are here to give and receive love. Your ego protects you from that vision by keeping you in a belief system that declares you are separate and special. By hanging on to the fears of your insufficiency, you can avoid taking any risks. As long as you have self-doubt and all of its attendant fears, you are guaranteed to stay in servitude to your false self. Your ego thrives on guilt. Your higher self knows that you should forgive yourself, learn from mistakes, and release feelings of fear and anxiety. But ego hands you guilt so that it will thrive. Guilt is the inner fear that you should pay a price for any and all mistakes you've committed in your life. Thus the ego convinces you that you must feel guilty, and it keeps you removed from your true spirit. Your ego doesn't reject love. The polite background ego voice whispers that love is a high ideal, but one that is loaded with danger. It warns you to not give too much love because you may be taken advantage of. Because you are so special, it tells you others want to take advantage of you. Ego promotes inauthentic love. In your relationships with others, your ego convinces you that your partner is just what you need to fill the emptiness within you. This is a great ruse that will forever keep you from knowing love and peace. Make a copy of this passage from Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Tape it to your mirror and read it every morning. It will help stimulate the inner opening to the love you seek and dissolve fears if you are willing to do what the poet suggests. He says, "I exist as I am, that is enough. If no other in the world be aware, I sit content. And if each and all be aware, I sit content. One world is aware, and by far the largest to me, and that is myself. And whether I come to my own today or in 10,000 or 10 million years, I can cheerfully take it now, or with equal cheerfulness, I can wait." Remind yourself that God created you in perfect love, that is changeless and eternal. As you recognize and affirm this aloud each day, you will lose your fear of inadequacy and incompleteness. Constantly recalling the affirmation of being a creation of God beyond the world of the manifest will chase the fears away. Forgive yourself and welcome love back into your life. I tell people, supposing you went to sleep and you had a dream, and in your dream you had all these different characters, and you had all of this money, and you had everything that you wanted in your dream. And then you woke up. And then you look back at your dream, and you became attached to the stuff that you had in your dream. And you said, wait a minute, I want that. There was gold in there. There was silver. There was all of these friends. I had a Ferrari there. I mean, all of this. I got to have that. Somebody would come away and cart you off and put you in a rubber room and say, that was a dream. You can't be attached to that. That's just a thought that you have. That's the way you got to view life. Instead of it being an 8-hour dream, it's an 80-year dream or a 90-year dream. And at the end of the dream, you don't want to be looking back at all of the stuff that you wish you could still have because you can't have it. You don't get any of that. So you try to detach yourself now while you're here, while you're alive, from the need to have that stuff. Instead, you just let it sort of all flow. As absurd as it would be for you to be attached to the stuff that you had in your dream, it's that absurd for you to be attached to the stuff that you're having in this dream. You have to die while you're alive. Now, that's a very hard concept for people to get. But you have to experience your own death while you're alive. Let me tell you a story. It's a wonderful story. It's an old, ancient story. I'll paraphrase it. There was a hunter who lived in India, and he would go to Africa every 2 years, and he would bring back animals and prizes and things like that. Well, one year he took off and he went to the jungle, and he discovered this large enclave inside the jungle, and it was filled with beautiful parrots, beautiful birds, multicolored, and they all talked, and he couldn't get over it. And he put a net out over one of the trees, and he captured one of the parrots. And he put the parrot in a cage. And he brought the parrot back to be with him in India as his pet. And he fed the parrot sunflower seeds, and he fed him rice, and he took wonderful care of him. He was very good, kept him in the cage. 2 years went by, and he talked to the parrot every day. And he said to the parrot, I'm now going back to Africa. Is there anything you would like me to say to your friends back there in the jungle when I'm back there? The parrot said, yes. Tell them that I'm very happy in my cage. Tell them that I am joyful and that I love being in my cage here with you. Just tell them that. The hunter went back to Africa.
He went back to the place in the jungle where he had been 2 years before, and he told the story. He said, your friend that I took back has a message for you. And the message is that he is happy in his cage, that he is joyful with me, and that he has no regrets. At the instant of hearing that, a bird on one of the branches keeled over and dropped dead. Dropped dead, stiff. The hunter assumed that he was just filled with sorrow at hearing of what had happened to his friend. So he went back to India, and he told his parrot what had happened. He said, I went back and I did just as you said. And I told them all out there, and at the moment that I told it, apparently one of the parrots was so upset that he'd missed you so much that he just dropped dead. And at the instant that that happened, the parrot in the cage keeled over, dead. His legs went straight up in the air, and he went stiff. The hunter was beside himself. He couldn't figure out how could this happen. And he took the dead parrot out of the cage, opened it up, and threw it out on the woodpile. The instant that the parrot landed on the woodpile, he flew up to the branch. And the hunter said, you tricked me. What is this? I thought you were dead. And the parrot said, my friend was sending me a message. He told me, by his actions, that in order for you to escape from your cage, you must die while you're alive. Okay, now that's an old story. That's an ancient story that's been told over the years. What does it mean? I mean, don't you see that this is a cage? That the whole planet is a cage? If you can just stand back far enough and see that we're still restricted by the limitations placed on us as human beings. We're stuck here, or maybe in our homes, or in wherever we are. We're all in cages. And even though we have more room to manipulate, we may even have a whole planet, we're still sort of in cages. Now, how do you escape from the cage that you're in? You have to die while you're alive. You have to literally experience your own death. All of us have to. All of us are going to die. So why not experience it in advance? And see yourself out of your body, gone, but able to look back at what's going on now. Just like the dream, where you have the dream and you have everything you want, but you're able to look back at it. As you do that, you begin to see the folly, the absurdity of hanging on to anything, of being attached to anything, of needing anything, of telling yourself that I can't be happy if, from the perspective of having died, but being able to look back on it just like the dream. As soon as you can do that, as soon as you can experience yourself formless, dimensionless, form and all of the attendant things that you hang on to become irrelevant. They're not necessary any longer. You have a whole new way of living, a new way of being. I had this really stunning realization one day when I was running, and I saw someone about 30 yards ahead of me who was running. And I was thinking about this concept of the unified life and that we're all one, and seeing the big picture and seeing ourselves as all connected and that we all come from a oneness. And because we're so stuck on our separateness, and I was looking at this runner some yards ahead of me, thinking, how could it be that I am connected to that person? I don't know him. I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him. How could there be any connection between us? It was like this thing dawned on me that I am already an I that is we. In other words, I have many different life forms on me. In my eyelids, I have thousands of bacteria. In my pancreas, in my ears, and all over me, I have like thousands of these different life forms. And yet I think of myself as a singular unit, but I am made up of a lot of life, a lot of stuff that is alive. So if you can get back far enough, again, it's always a question of perspective. If you could leave Earth plane, and you can only do that in thought, and look down and try to see humanity, you would really see one body. I mean, if you could get away far enough, you would see, and it would look, as you get closer and closer and closer, just like as you get closer and closer with a microscope, into a raindrop. A raindrop looks like a raindrop until you start examining it closer and closer and closer, and then you see whole universes within one section of it that have never even had any contact with the other section of it. And so, well, that's the perspective you have to get on us all being connected. We only see it from this very tiny perspective. Now, how you can apply this in your life is just to remind yourself that just because there's a distance between you and somebody else doesn't mean that there's not a connection. That's the beauty of thought again. It wasn't, an hour ago that someone here at the studio said something to me about her father. And I said to her, well, get me your father's address and I'll send him a copy of one of my books. And she said, oh, he would really like that. And then she started talking about her aunt. And she was doing like a little imitation, and it was really funny. And she said, oh, my aunt just loves you. And she lives down in Florida. She said, she loves you. And I said, well, get me her address, and I'll send her one, too. I'd be happy to. And she didn't say anything at that moment. But then as she came to go to lunch with us, she said, you're not going to believe this, but my father called right after I talked to you, and he gave me my aunt's address, which I didn't have before. And she said, isn't that a coincidence? And I said, that isn't any more of a coincidence than that we've been talking about this very thing right here for the last several hours here in the studio in Chicago today, that there is a connection and that you'll see it when you believe it. And all I suggest to you is that you try it. If you pull into a gas station and somebody is right up ahead of you and they're parked in a place where you think you should be, and if they were only up at the pump a little further away, then you would be able to be happy and they would be able to be happy. Don't tell yourself that. See them as being exactly where they are, that you're connected to them, and treat them that way so that you don't treat them with anger. You accept it. It's always acceptance. It's openness and acceptance. What you do is you just pull up in front of them and back your car up a little bit and use that pump. Don't treat that person as if they were separate from you. Treat them as if they were a part of you, because they are. It's just that you can't see the perspective. You will be able to see that perspective. You'll get that when you leave this form that you're so attached to and go into another dimension. You'll see all of humanity as one. You are one of the pieces of this puzzle called humanity. And if you are missing from it, or if you're incomplete, or if you're not in harmony, then you make all of humanity incomplete. And that's exactly how important you are as a person. And if you just start thinking like that, that everybody out there that you run into is somehow, in some way, connected to you, you stop being antagonistic toward them, because you know that if you got antagonistic toward the microbes that live inside the lining of your large intestine and just didn't want them there and said, oh, I'm going to do everything I can to get them out of there, that would kill you. You literally need that life, that I, that is we, the self-contained unit that is comprised of all of life. You have to have all of that. It's equally true in a different level for all of humanity. And you start seeing everybody like that. And before long, you'll start seeing the connections. They'll start being there, but only when you believe it.
Do you know your past? Do you know where it is? It's only where you think. Do you know that every relationship you have, close your eyes, just close your eyes. Just close them. Okay, where's your husband? Where's your wife? Where are your children, your grandchildren? Where's your ex-spouse? They're all in your mind. Open your eyes. Now they're gone. Close your eyes. There they are again. They're just in your mind. You carry your relationships around in your mind. And if your thoughts about your relationships are on what is wrong, what you don't like, what you hate, what they did to you, that will be your experience. And you will materialize or manifest more and more of that pain into your life. If you look at what you love about them and make that the focus of your attention, that will be the nature of your relationship. It's the greatest secret in making any relationship work. It's so simple. Always focus on what you love if you want that to expand in your life. When you look at someone that you're in a relationship with, look at what you love. Because what you think about is what expands. I'll be talking about that a little bit later on. About not giving energy to the things you don't want. Because what you think about is what expands. And if what you're thinking about what you don't want, then more of what you don't want will just keep showing up. It's the only way it works. So now I'd suggest to everybody in this room and everybody listening that you take an eraser to all of the wounds of your past and you just send them away. And don't make them your calling card anymore. And bring the presence of God to those problems. And the presence of God is nothing more than a higher, faster energy. It's all energy. Everything is energy. As Einstein said, nothing happens until something moves. And spiritual energy is just energy that moves very fast and at very high frequencies. And problematic energy is very slow and very low frequencies. And when high, fast frequencies are put in the face of low, slow energies, they are nullified. They dissipate. They can't survive. There's a song that they sing at a lot of the churches that I speak in. It says, "Surely the presence of God is in this place." It's a great affirmation. Anytime, or the affirmation from A Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this. But surely the presence of God is in this place. Every time that I have a conflict with one of my children or with any place, I just bring that line to bear on what is I am experiencing right now. I just bring that line to bear. Surely the presence. Because there's no place that God is not. As the little child in India in the 7th century, who was an avatar, who was really God in a human form, and everywhere he would go, people would be healed just by being in his presence, just like St. Francis. He'd be seen in the village, he'd be seen in the valley at the same time. Lights would emanate from his body wherever he would go, and everyone in the village knew that this was a child of God. This was God in their village without the benefit of an ego. This was an egoless being who had shown up in their village, which is what I believe our great spiritual teachers were. Like, there's ways to reach highest levels of consciousness. One of them is to take on an ego and then spend a big hunk of your life seeing if you can shed as much of it as you can. Which has been my path. But there's another one where you just show up and you never take on an ego in the first place. There's only been a handful of those in recorded history. And this little child was one of them. And the elders in the tribe knew that this was God in a human form. And they went up to the little boy and they said to him, trying to bribe him, "I'll give you an orange," they said, "if you can tell me where God is." And the little boy, without hesitating, said, "I'll give you 2 oranges if you can tell me where God isn't." It's one of the very fundamental precepts of this entire program, is that there's only one power in the universe, and that is the power of God. And that whenever we see evil, it's nothing more than love going in the wrong direction, away from its source. And all we have to do is figure out a way to get it to turn around and start returning to its source. Because there's only one power in the universe. And every time we think that we are in something that isn't good, like a problem, like disorder, disharmony, disease, discomfort, what we've done is we've used our mind to create a separation from God. And as long as we are moving away from that source, from that spirit, as long as we're moving opposite of that, those problems continue to manifest. But if we can somehow figure out a way to turn around and move back in that direction, we can eliminate it.
Inspiration responds to our attentiveness in various and sometimes unexpected ways. For example, when I began writing this book, I debated between the 2 titles, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Destiny, or Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. One day, while I was swimming in the ocean, I was going back and forth in my mind, trying out both titles. Still uncertain, when I'd finished my swim, I called Reed Tracy, who's the president and CEO of my publishing company at Hay House, from a payphone to get his opinion about the title. While I waited for him to answer, the word calling appeared on the miniature screen of the telephone. Nothing else, just calling. And then the word began to flash on and off as if it were trying to get my attention. When Reed answered, I told him what had just occurred, and we both agreed on Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, for the title of this book and this program. All of this may appear to be nothing more than a silly coincidence, but I know better. I think of the word inspiration as meaning being in spirit. When we're in spirit, we're inspired. And when we're inspired, it's because we're back in spirit, fully awake to spirit within us. Being inspired is an experience of joy. We feel completely connected to our source and totally on purpose. Our creative juices flow, and we bring exceptionally high energy to our daily life. We're not judging others or ourselves. We're uncritical and unbothered by behaviors or attitudes that, in uninspired moments, are frustrating. Our heart sings in appreciation for every breath, and we're tolerant, joyful, and loving. Being in spirit isn't necessarily restricted to the work we do or the activities of our daily life. We can be inspired and at the same time be unsure of what vocation to pursue or what activities we want to schedule. Inspiration is a simple recognition of spirit within ourselves. It's a return to that invisible, formless field from which all things emanate, a field of energy that I call intention in my previous book, The Power of Intention. My experience with being in spirit. When I'm in spirit, I have a feeling of contentment, but more than this, I experience joy. I'm able to receive the vibrational energies of my source, call them voices or messages or silent reminders, even invisible suggestions or what have you, but they're vibrations of energy that I'm able to align with as I get myself out of the way. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, one of the world's great geniuses, once remarked, quote, "When I am, as it were, completely myself, entirely alone and of good cheer, say traveling in a carriage or walking after a good meal or during the night when I cannot sleep, it is on such occasions that my ideas flow best and most abundantly. Whence and how they come, I know not, nor can I foresee them." End of quote. We don't have to be a genius to know what Mozart speaks of. The same force in a different way is flowing through you and me right now. I've learned to remove resistance to the free flow of this spiritual energy by reminding myself to align with it, or to be in spirit in my thoughts and my expectations. When I sit down to write, my desire is to invite spirit to express through me. And I encourage ideas to flow freely. Like Mozart, I'm connected as if it were to my source in spirit, thinking and expecting to be the instrument of my spiritual source. Ideas flow, and whatever assistance I need just shows up. And, like Mozart, I can't describe how the ideas come, and I can't force them. Staying in spirit seems to be the secret to this feeling of being inspired. I also find that inspiration flows in other areas of my life when my primary mission is like what Michael Berg so beautifully describes in Becoming Like God, Kabbalah, and Our Ultimate Destiny. Quote, "Just as every being is God's business, every being becomes our business as well." Unquote. That is, being inspired necessitates the willingness to suspend ego and enter a space where I want to share who I am and what I have in a completely unlimited fashion.
When you feel inspired, everything works. The reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired. And Patanjali said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and great and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. There's some very important wisdom in that. This idea of finding yourself inspired means that you allow these dormant forces, these things that are in every single one of us, to come alive. Consciousness begins to expand. Things begin to show up in your life. You begin to manage the coincidences of your life.
What goes around truly does come around. The more you give away and do everything that you do in the service of others, the more that seems to come back. The cycle of real magic takes root. This lesson of prosperity applies to all fields of endeavor. When I was boarding an airplane early one time, I overheard the sarcastic voice of a flight attendant saying, "Here come the animals." I knew it was only a matter of time until that organization perished from a scarcity of passengers. Sure enough, they've gone into bankruptcy.
Employees need to know in their souls that they are privileged to serve those who are willing to give of their income to use the service. But I'm not talking to an organization, I'm talking to you. You can shift your consciousness all you want, but you must also shift the emphasis of what you do from results to purpose. Try it. Shift for a 1-month period of time and see if miracles don't start showing up in your life. The less you need to force this new way of being on yourself, the easier it becomes to let it be the guiding principle of your life. It is about allowing your natural self to flow peacefully and knowing your bliss comes from giving and not getting. Letting yourself just flow is a concept you will want to become quite familiar with as you begin to allow the prosperity that you desire in your life. Earlier in this tape, I discussed how everything seems to work perfectly in our lives when we are inspired. Flow is that kind of an inspiration, one so powerful that all obstacles seem to be removed, and we are in love with what we are doing so much that it seems to just flow without any effort from us at all. Getting to flow in your life means achieving a state of concentration so total that everything else becomes non-existent. People who experience prosperity in their lives know how to achieve this magnificent state, wherein their activities, instead of being a tedious set of chores to finish, become more like a meditation, only they are active and involved rather than sitting quietly. Getting to this zone, you are literally watching your body do things that are incredible. You are experiencing magnificent joy or bliss, and nothing can get in your way. You are on purpose, and you are having that peak experience that others can only dream about. There is a way to get to this state of flow. These are not only the secrets to becoming a superachiever in the workplace, they are the secrets for producing genuine miracles in your life. This process includes 1. Having an overriding spiritual goal that gives meaning to your work. Making your work a meditative experience, and instead of seeing yourself as doing a particular task, you actually in your mind become the task. You shift from a human doing to a human being, if you will. There is no separation. You and the task are unified, all in the name of that overriding spiritual objective to give of yourself in a purposeful way. 2. Focus and close your mind to all distractions. You can train your mind to focus, and this is why I've been encouraging you to learn to meditate. Give your mind the same mental training that you give your body when you want your body to be in a maximum physical condition. You need not be a slave to your senses. Focusing is your natural knowing within. You can either ignore it or go there often. 3. Surrender to the process. You must resist your impulse to strive for what you want. Surrender to God or your higher power, or however you choose to spell it. You must let go and surrender to the actual process. Forget about the result and put your mind and your physical body totally into the experience at hand. This is not that difficult to achieve. Don't strain to achieve. Instead, enjoy the process of the work that you are doing. The results will come independent of your striving for them. 4. Experience the ecstasy. This is the automatic result that will flow to you from the above guidelines. You will know a kind of inner beatitude and bliss that will be unmistakable. It will sneak up on you and hit you over the head, so to speak, but nevertheless, you will know that glorious emotional peak experience if you get yourself to flow in your life. The ecstasy is its own miracle. 5. Watch as you see yourself reaching peak productivity without striving. Your state of ecstasy opens up new vistas of creativity and energy. This natural state of bliss is the key to improving your performance. This is the state that superachievers are able to create for themselves. The processes of surrendering, focusing, and living at purpose lead to ecstasy. When you feel that inner bliss, you simply want more and more of it. The more of it that you are able to create for yourself, the more productive you become. Your thoughts create all of this ecstasy, and ultimately all of the miracles that are going to come into your life in the form of increased prosperity. Your mind is very powerful in terms of what it can produce in your physical reality, as well as the physical reality beyond your own borders. You are now on a path of working toward reversing scarcity consciousness to one of prosperity. This is largely a mental game. You must convince yourself that you and only you are responsible for the pictures in your mind. You must know how very powerful your picturing process is in creating the material world that you experience. This is a universal principle. This is a vital, alive factor of the universe that you are a part of and that is also a part of you. What you can conceive of as a picture in your mind, you can create in the physical world, provided you do not let go of the picture. My wife Marcy and I are currently having our children take lessons from acknowledged masters in the art of meditating and learning to trust one's inner vision. We do this not to give them an advantage over others, but for the purpose of their knowing that they have something within them that no one can ever take away from them, regardless of the material circumstances of their lives. They are learning very early that their peace and tranquility as human beings is dependent upon themselves, and that they have a special retreat within that is always available to them.